the Nike Zoom Fly 5 versus the Zoom Fly 6. Predecessor versus successor. Which of these was the better Zoom Fly model, and which one should you purchase long term? Let's get into it. So before we get into the video, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel. If you're already subscribed to watching content, thanks so much. Love you guys a lot. Make sure you follow me on Instagram and Strava for all sorts of other updates and things like that. So without further ado, let's begin. Specs for both shoes up here respectively. And just some of the background, I had to think about this before the video even started. Like, when did I get this shoe versus when I got this one? Again, I think this one came out in like winter of 2023, and I bought this in the spring of 2023 if my memory and archive stands corrected here. And I had a very mixed experience with this shoe overall, as we'll get into it. And then I just bought this one like a few weeks ago as of winter 2024. So there's about a year and a half kind of difference between both models in terms of when I had purchased them. But that's not to say that this one didn't come out around the same time or 2 years later or a little bit earlier. So anyways, yeah. Main spec differences across the shoes, first and foremost, is that the Zoom Fly 6 is overall heavier. It does have a 41mm heel, 33 forefoot, giving it that 8mm offset as kind of standard, but it does have a much larger stack height, a more max cushion style, but it does have the carbon plate running through the one piece of ZoomX foam that we have in the shoe that's embedded in the recycled ZoomX compound that's presented here. And that's kind of also the principle of this shoe, that it's advertising that it has been using recycled compounds and whatnot. And again, in 2023, there was like a blocky kind of theme to the shoes, and as a result, it has sort of the structure that it has. And you can see by my wear and tear of the shoe, I guess you can say my form was still in a pretty whack spot, considering that the anterior side of the shoe has taken the brunt of the wear, and then the interior side seems almost like brand new, but not quite, and yeah, it's kind of a mess. We'll get into the rest of this kind of later. But yeah, getting into the Zoom Fly 6, we do have, the 40 and 32, 40 millimeters in the heel, 32 forefoot, 8mm offset stack height, which again resembles more of the Alpha Fly 3, the Vaporfly Next Percent series shoes, so the specs are a little bit more in line with those as a training partner style shoe. And then again, we do have ZoomX running the top of the section of the shoe, and then we have that EVA foam running the bottom with the carbon plate sandwiched in between. And this was probably something Nike should have, I guess, when they learned that this was the good thing in the Pegasus Turbo 2 and the Pegasus Turbo series shoes, they should have just stuck to it. They shouldn't have just gone with like a full-blown ZoomX recycled compound and said, we'll just stick a carbon plate in it and hope it works, because clearly when we get into it, you're going to find out it doesn't work. What you need is that ZoomX foam for that soft, I guess like sink into the shoe, but then that high rebound effect. But you need the EVA durability and structure to protect you from the concrete and provide that sort of level, I guess, resistance from, again, sinking so far into the ground that you lose the spring. You need both foams to work in tandem with one another rather than one compound with a carbon plate. You need ZoomX, EVA, carbon plate. I think it's a winning formula overall, right? As we get into the uppers, I think I talked about this before, that the Zoom Fly 5 upper ran a little thick. It wasn't, I think it was like a pretty good fit. I didn't think it was too tight while I was running in it at the time. Again, it's been like a year and a half since I've run in this thing. Truly, I did put in, I think, 200 plus miles as far as I'm aware. And the other things I remember noting was that with the shoelace pattern and the tongue, the way you tie the shoe down is extremely important, because you could cut circulation in your foot, and therefore it felt like your foot was cold while you were running, or it just felt a strong discomfort in the top frontal arch area of your foot. I do distinctly remember that, and it was not pleasant, so you had to loosen the shoe at times to get the fit right. But if you got the fit right, I guess you were getting something out of this shoe at that point. The same story kind of exists in the Zoom Fly 6. Again, you need to play around with the fit, but we don't have just a plush tongue. We do have this gusseted, like, minimalist tongue that's presented here. So again, you don't have as much material I guess like pushing down on the foot or creating sort of this leeway for the tightness of the shoe to either increase or decrease, particularly like at the very top area where you tie your shoe. And as a result, the amount of times you have to play around with the fit of the shoe is sort of less than you would in like a Zoom Fly 5. And again, we got the standard mesh upper, we have a bit of a shine to it. And as I've mentioned before, I think the toe box in the Zoom Fly 6 runs a little bit tighter than the Zoom Fly 5, which kind of has its pros and cons, but overall it's not bad, it's just a little bit more noticeable than its predecessor. And now when we talk about rides, I think it's fair to say that, as I mentioned already, or before we get into the rides, again, with the outsole of this shoe, we do have our differences in both of the outsole structures. I think the principle of the design stay the same, it's just the rubber design and placement just varies. Again, we do have like this big block of rubber on this side. We do have sort of the lugged structure on this side of the shoe. And then we have a little bit more of this opening for the EVA foam. The Zoom X here is exposed for the recycled compound. And I remember when I was walking, there's like this, I guess like plastic piece that if you were walking on the ground a certain way, it would get like sticky and make like a popping sound. So this was sort of weird to have exposed. And again, in the heel guards of the shoes, same kind of principle. It's just a rubber, foam, rubber kind of structure going on both shoes. So that's what I want to get out of the way. Now let's talk about the rides. I would arguably say that my experience with both shoes, granted there's like a million other elements that are involved here, whether it's like, how was my training in 2023 versus 2024? When was I training? What was the goal during the training? These all factor in, but if we keep those sort of aside when I make this point, I would say that the Zoom Fly 6 overall, I would say, performed better than the Zoom Fly 5 in terms of what I remember from experience. With the Zoom Fly 5, for example, I remember this shoe just being extremely blocky despite the potential of what was on paper, right? I was like, oh, cool, huge compound of Zoom X with a carbon plate. This thing's going to be sick, right? It just seems like that's the winning formula because that's what we have in like the Vaporfly Next Percent. That's what we have in the Alpha Fly, minus the Alpha Fly having the Air Zoom pods in the shoe. But something about the design of the shoe just fell flat. Whether it was the stack height just simply being too high with like a max style cushion of more than 40 millimeters in the heel, whether it was just the blocky design of the shoe where it looks just like a brick. I couldn't pinpoint it at the time, but the Zoom Fly 5 was not what I thought it was going to be, and it didn't live up to the hype that I anticipated at the time. And there's, again, maybe the shoe was really good, maybe just my fitness at the time was not good, but overall it was just something I remember not being too pleasant about this shoe. Whereas in the Zoom Fly 6, the ride of the shoe it's good, it's not great, it's not like the best thing I've ever had, but it is a significant improvement to the Zoom Fly 5. Kind of rides up there with, I would say, like the Puma DV8 Nitros, the Adidas Boston 12s. This is like the shoe that's supposed to be in that caliber of speed daily trainer style shoe that can be used for your race day if you want to use it as such. I guess we would call that, what, a budget race day shoe. So if you don't want to invest in like the Alpha Fly, throw in the extra $100, you'd save $100 and buy this, whatever, fine. So that being said, like, again, there's the winning formula with the foams, with the carbon plate structuring of EVA, Zoom X, carbon plate in the center of the shoe. Having a good fit, not being too tight, not being super minimalist, not looking like a brick of a shoe, having a little bit more of the principles that were affiliated with the Alpha Fly 3, the Vaporfly Next Percent 3, and some of the structural shoes within this time frame of like summer to winter of 2024. Just taking those principles, like, I think Nike's slowly, I'm not saying they are coming around, I'm just saying they're slowly kind of figuring it out again, despite the fact that their competition in most cases could be way ahead of them at this point with product that comes out, as we've probably discussed on this channel, which you as the viewer probably know. You wouldn't know if you didn't come to this channel, first and foremost, but you're also probably educated on shoes to begin with to even want to look at this video and kind of get the assessment. So I digress from that point. Between the two shoes, like for performance, for fit, for which one I would buy today, I would still probably lean for the Zoom Fly 6. It is the successor is better than the Zoomfly 5. That being said, if we had to add the Zoomfly 4 into this mix, it would be a little bit more debatable, as I really loved the Zoomfly 4 when I had it. I think I sold it, that's why I don't have it right now, because I was looking for it earlier for this video, and it's just not in my house anymore, which is okay, which if people were looking at my old shoe collection and said, we want to buy the Zoomfly 5 from you, then it probably tells you that it was probably a good shoe, right? So I think we're going to leave the assessment here. If you disagree or agree, let me know in the comments below. If you had both of these shoes, had similar experiences, you know, let's talk about it, let's debate about it in the sections below, but I think we're going to leave it at that for now. Zoomfly 6 is the better shoe. It's not the world's best budget race day shoe that I've used, but it is significantly, it's more of an upgrade than the Zoomfly 5 at this time. So I think we'll leave it at that. So thanks again for watching. See you guys in the next one.